Three, two, one. Welcome to the SaaS Pulse Show. My name is Michael Bertoni, and I'm the founder and CEO of SaaS Talent. And really excited today, everybody. We have a special treat. We don't get a lot of security experts in SaaS here on the show, but this is a big thing, obviously, security, right? So Bob Stasio, he is with Renaissance. He is the Chief Information Officer as well as the Chief Security Officer, the CISO, as we would say it. He leads over 100 IT and security experts over at Renaissance, which does adaptive assessments and is one of the leaders in EdTech. So it's great to have you on the show, Bob.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's get right into it here. Let's tell the audience, what is a CISO, right? So what CISO? So if you're a company listening to this right now, you're probably an early stage company, you're a startup, you're security. Why should I care? Why should I care, right? So Bob, explain to the audience, what's a CISO and why should they care?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting history of the role. I bet it probably started 15, 20 years ago now, primarily out of the financial space or more heavily regulated space. But basically, it's the head security person at a company, and you're responsible for kind of the governance and policies, security policies, setting those up and making sure they're followed, and also kind of the operational things of security, detecting and responding to incidents. So you're kind of responsible for that whole crew. And the position, like I said, started maybe 15, 20 years ago in a more regulated space. And there may, at that time, been a very small percentage of companies with the role. Now you're starting to see it more and more. You're definitely starting to see it being pushed into the SaaS space. Even as companies get to a few million in revenue, you're starting to at least have a role identified for the person to do this. And it's certainly something you need before you go, if you were to IPO or go public as a SaaS startup and get to that point, you would definitely need a CISO, because you would go into the regulated public company area. So kind of a little flavor of what the role is.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit. We started with a CISO, so people know what a CISO is here listening, but tell us about your background a little bit, your background and journey. I love the superhero backstory. So how did you get to Renaissance, right? So how did that happen? So I saw you were with Dreamit a little bit. You had some other stints at DuPont. What does that look like? So how did you come to Renaissance as an employee?
Sure. Well, the very quick version is I've been in security about 20 years. About the first half of my career, 10 years was in the government side in the U.S. Army and the National Security Agency. And then the last 10 years have been at larger companies like DuPont, took a stop at Dreamit for a while, which was a venture capital group, and then ended up coming to Renaissance via a contact I had, colleague I used to work with at the National Security Agency, who worked for the parent, or I should say, the investment company that is an investor in Renaissance, and asked to bring me on. So that's kind of how I got here. I got into the industry a little bit by accident. But when I first started my career in the military, I was mostly doing intelligence work.
Yeah.
And it didn't really have cyber at the time. And what was going on was the military was kind of responding to a lot of cyber attacks, cyber events, and they started to create these roles, create these groups. And I got kind of looped up into that because the intelligence community kind of had a close proximity to that world, and kind of just fell into it. And then when I left the government, these were very applicable roles to me in the private sector, very similar to what I was doing in the military.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about Renaissance, right? So leading ed tech company, right? They're saying in their website, see every student. I read about adaptive assessments, right? So you're like, so Bob sees them all, but no, just kidding. But so tell us a little bit about Renaissance. So what's the elevator pitch? What's the value proposition?
Sure. Yeah. So there's kind of three categories of products at Renaissance. You have assessment products, which, do that give assessments on students' capabilities. It's primarily started in the reading area. That was kind of
Mm,
what uh, Renaissance became famous for. So that's one category of products. Then you have practice and instruction, like taking, short, I guess, classes or modules in various areas like phonics or math, things like that. And
mhm.
then we have a group of products we call insights, which kind of take some of the data you might get from other products or elsewhere and provide insight on a student, how they're performing, how they're doing, tracking their journey through their grades and things like that. We're K through 12. I think we
Mm,
focus a little bit more on the earlier side.
yeah.
But the value of what Renaissance brings is we have a lot of different products in our portfolio, and you could really provide insight across the student, how they're performing, and make those adaptive assessments, make adjustments to the student's course of instruction because you have the ability to see all that data.
Yeah. So what does the market look like? So I mean, obviously I know you're one of the industry leaders, right? You're a little bit of a bigger company.
Bigger,
And
yeah,
that's
bigger in this area, yeah.
yeah. So what does the market look like? I mean, my girlfriend is a leading she's actually an educator here in South Jersey.
Oh,
She's one
awesome.
of the yeah, I mean, she works K through 12. She actually works more the younger kids too. I totally get it. Like I totally get why this is important. So tell me about the space. Like you're working, your ICP is K through 12. What's the space look like? So who are other players in the space? What's it look like?
You should ask your girlfriend. She may use Renaissance. We're in about a third of schools in
I'm
the
gonna ask
US.
her.
She very well may. But yeah, to me, this is my first time working in this industry. Since I've been in security, security can apply to any industry. Obviously, it's very valuable in the education sector in SaaS because your whole product is hosting and IT and it's very accessible. So you want to make sure it's secure and in education, you want to protect student data. But what I've discovered being in this industry, it's really a fragmented industry in some ways. You have certain companies that focus more on like the higher education sector, like
Right.
Blackboard, I think is one of them. And then you have certain ones that focus on just like high school, if you have ones that focus on just assessment,
Yeah.
or you have ones that focus on things like administrative functions around a school, attendance and things like that. So
Mm,
it's really there's a kind of niches in certain areas. It seems like there's a bit of consolidation going on within
nice.
this field in various areas. You see a lot of mergers and acquisitions happening all the time. But yeah, so we're one of the bigger players, and usually we're well known for the assessment area. And I think we'd be probably categorized by as one of like the top three or so companies
Yeah.
in the space. Yeah.
That's awesome. So in terms of what you do, let's explain to the audience, right? So again, what are the things that you're working on that are awesome for Renaissance, right? And why, there's probably people listening to this that are smaller companies that are solopreneurs. How could
Yep.
they maybe apply it to what they're doing? I mean, you have 100 people. Like, what are the things you're doing? But how can they apply? How can they apply security to what they're doing, like ASAP? And my secondary question is, what's the role of AI? Right. So everybody wants to know that. Like, what's the role of AI?
Everybody's talking about AI. Yeah, that's right. Just having a conversation about that just before I got on here with you. Yeah, so one of the big reasons I came on to Renaissance is to help really build out and mature the security program. Um, and and one of the pitches I made to the leadership was well, let me actually also have some ownership of the IT area. That's why I had
Hmm.
that kind of dual hat. I actually asked for that
Yeah.
because I think that the overlap is the Venn diagram is like this now, it really crosses over very, very much so. So what I tried to do is kind of transform IT at the same time as making things secure. And by transforming IT, you tend to save money
Sure.
because you get rid of duplicative systems, you make things more efficient, and we use
Love
some
it.
of the savings to kind of fund out our security initiatives. So
Mhm.
that's been a really good kind of flywheel effect. As we get rid of things that we don't need and we consolidate, it's actually less to take care of. So it's more
Yeah.
focus for our team, but it also costs less money. So we use that savings. But one of the probably our biggest number one thing we do is take or secure our product, right? So our
Mm.
product runs in,
Cloud.
cloud environment.
Yeah.
So we're constantly scanning it for vulnerabilities and patching
Mm.
those vulnerabilities. We're looking for adversary attacks and
Mm.
responding to those. And I would say nowadays there's so many different offerings out there in the security marketplace. You could get security if you're a two-person company or a 2,000-person company.
Right. Right.
Yeah, one of the great new products that's out there is called an MDR or XDR, sometimes it's referred to, and usually that stands for Managed Detection and Response. And that's become kind of my new favorite category in security. It basically is kind of a scalable version of what you would call a security operations center. It's kind of like
Mm.
outsourcing your security operations to a vendor, but they also give you some of their technology to put on your machines, your
Sure.
systems, to monitor for bad guy stuff, and then they help you respond to it. And
Right.
they've done, and most of the vendors do it in such a way where it's extraordinarily scalable. You start off with 5 machines and then move up to 500,000 if you wanted to. So even if you're just starting a company or you're kind of at that mid-market range where you're becoming a bit more of a target for the adversary, you really want to look into that. And you kind of can
Mm.
you can have a one-person security team internally, but you can really kind of outsource some of those critical functions to one of those vendors. So,
Yeah, what's really interesting, Bob, and I could do some intros for you. So I started working with some MSPs, right, which
yeah,
are
yeah,
smaller, and all these MSPs are crushing it right now because there are
yeah,
tons and tons of small businesses. Well,
yes,
and
right.
they all need security, right? Microsoft is like leading the market along with Kaseya and companies like that.
Microsoft's doing very well. Yeah.
Yeah,
I look at security, the practice of security, like being the medical field. I actually think it's very, very similar to the medical field. Like if you're a doctor or want to become a doctor, you have to go through 4 years of medical school, and then you have to go into a residency, well, first you have to do an internship, then you have to do residency before you get board certified in a particular area, and then you could actually practice your medicine. You can't just go through school and come out and do surgery day one. And security is a lot like that. It takes a long time to grow somebody to actually become good at what they do. And that's why I think MSPs have done very well, because it's like, if I'm a regular business, if I'm a 2,000-person company, I'm not going to have a doctor on staff if one of my
right,
employees is hurt. I'm going to send them to a hospital, right?
right,
I'm going to
right.
outsource that. So it's kind of similar in that, like, you kind of put the experts in one place, and you kind of outsource to that. And I would say MSPs are a little bit like the first generation version of this,
Exactly.
and the MDR is kind of the 2.0 version of this
Mm.
concept, because it really allows technology to be paired with the human and to do well. And to bleed into your other point about AI, some of these companies are really leveraging AI very well
Oh
and to be
yeah.
quite effective. Yeah.
Yeah, so the other company I want to introduce you to, one of my clients, if you remember this or want to write it down, called Enigma Networks with a Z.
Mhm. Sure.
Yeah, we built them an agent that sits on the network
Yeah.
and basically gathers data, which there's products that do that, right?
Yeah.
But their differentiator that we did is we graphically made the report. Like, so we put this amazing graphical, actually built in Angular JS, like this amazing like reporting thing, because a lot of this stuff's like just data, like in like spreadsheets and stuff like that, and people don't know how to look at it. But that's another one I want to introduce you to.
Sure.
Um, but in terms of challenges over the last few years, this is a great, I love this podcast, by the way. What are your challenges? Like, what have been the challenges that you've had to deal with in security? I'm sure you got to get adoption, like you got to get people to understand, like, what am I even doing here? Right. So, so what have been some of the major challenges and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. And it's not just something I've dealt with at Renaissance, but even I was at DuPont before this, and kind of similar challenge. The way modern companies operate, there's constant change, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's dealing with mergers, acquisitions, divestitures. We're going to take this chunk of the company and sell off, but we have to support it with IT and security for such and such months until it happens. Or we're buying
Right.
this company, and on day one we own them, so we have to, be responsible for the security and the IT. So those are things that are like placed on top of you above and beyond your normal day to day. So it's really trying to figure out how to deal with those challenges, how to deal with that extra work and do it kind of effectively. What I've done to kind of help with this is I've dedicated specific teams to focus on those things. And the more and more we do them, the better those teams get. So I have like a whole team that just does integration.
Oh, wow.
And you would think like, oh, we're just going to put them on for a little while until the integration is complete. Well, the integration is like a journey, not a destination. It never ends, right? And then
Right.
the time you think it ends, another one's going to happen. So I have a whole team that's really dedicated to that. So they know all the tools we use for the
Hmm.
integration. They're spun up on what they have to message to the employees, and getting the culture to be integrated in, things like that. And that's worked really well. I've also stood up a special team that just does communication strategy. I almost have like a marketing team in my IT and security group. They kind of work with a bunch of different stakeholders like IT, marketing, and everyone else, and they help create messages and communications to the rest of the workforce on what's happening, what to be aware of, what they have to do, and that's something is sometimes overlooked with IT and security leaders, but I think it's really important.
Yeah, Bob, it's been an amazing show. I mean, I think everybody listening to this right now. So, Bob's been the first kind of SaaS security leader we've had on. So, if you're dealing with challenges and issues, problems in security, you want to talk to somebody, reach out to Bob, connect with him on LinkedIn. And yeah, Bob, this has been great, a great podcast, great learning actually for me. And yeah, stick around for a few minutes. We'll debrief, but it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, great.